Okay, in this tutorial, I'm going to take you guys through creating this bookshelf. So we're going to start in Fusion 360 by creating some parameters. We're going to set up a sketch. We'll create a full 3D model and then show you how to take that 3D model and prepare it for manufacturing by laying all the parts out, putting on some dog bone fillets, setting up your CAM to create G-code, simulating that, ultimately loading it all up into the ShopBot, cutting it out, and finishing it up and creating the final product. So let's get started. So here in Fusion, when you start up, you're always in a new design. If you want to create a new design, you click File, New Design, and now you're in a completely empty project or part or assembly or whatever you want to call it. And before we do anything, for a project like this, what I first want to do is I want to create some parameters. So I'm going to create some parameters by pressing the little green checkbox. For example, the first one and most important is the ply thickness. So let's say I've measured that exactly at 0.725. We want to put this in, and we're going to use this all over the place so that as I develop the design, I'm always referencing this one parameter of ply. So if I go to rerun the job and I measure at 0.735 or whatever, for each time I cut a new piece of material, I can adjust this one number here, and all of the pockets and tabs and heights and everything else are going to all adjust to accommodate the exact ply thickness that I've defined. I can also use this to define overall things, like if I wanted to make a configurable bookshelf. Let's say we wanted the height to be 26 inches and we want to create a width of 30 or a depth of 14, etc. I can keep creating these parameters and I'm going to use them all over the place. So fast forward, here I've created all of these parameters. So you can see I've defined a width, a height, a depth for the overall bookshelf, the ply thickness. I've also defined the cutter diameter I'm going to use. So this way I can change this cutter diameter, and if I do things like create dog bone fillets later, the diameter of those is going to be referenced to the size cutter I'm using. So it's nice to be able to reference this here. Some things I didn't even end up using, like this tall. If I wanted to put a tolerance gap somewhere, I could be referencing that. Things like shelf kick, the tab width. Also something here like a blind tab where I don't want to go all the way through the material. I'm going to say only go about 60% of the way through the material. So these are the types of things that you create these parameters, and then we're going to use them as we go work on this design. Okay, so the first thing we want to do in this design is going to be to create a sketch to represent the profile of the bookshelf. So I'm going to say sketch, create sketch. I'm going to sketch on the side profile face, and then we'll come in and start by creating a rectangle, and we'll draw this just some arbitrary shape, and then we can give it a dimension. So here we're going to leverage those parameters we created. So instead of typing in a number, I'm going to type in the word height, and then it's going to show me what that value is. Same here, depth. Now I can come in and create some more rectangles, and these are going to define the different pieces. So like the top will have a shelf, we'll have a bottom shelf, have a little kick plate here, and then we'll have a piece along the back. And now it's just a matter of creating some more dimensions to define the sizes. So the thickness of all of these is going to be ply. And this is one of the real advantages, is by adding this parameter all over the place. So we'll create these dimensions of ply, and then once you actually are ready to cut this and you go in and you measure your material very precisely, you just have to go in and change that parameter for ply, and then all of this will update, and then all your thicknesses and everything else will be all up to date. Same if you decide you want to change the design. We're going to just type in the word kick here. Again, we'll do up to here. We change this. This is called shelf. So if you ever want to change some of this stuff, you can just modify those parameters. If you do want to use a specific value, for example, like this, maybe you just know that no matter what, that's always going to be fixed. We just always want that to be 1 inch. You can type in a regular number at any time in these dimensions as well. And now you've got your overall sketch profile defined. Now that I have this sketch done, this is going to kind of outlines all of the parts in the bookshelf. Now what I want to do is start creating individual components. So to do that, I'm going to create an extrude, and then I want to pick the sections of this sketch for the given part. So in this case, I'm going to start by creating the top. So that's going to be that profile and that. So you should pick 2 things, and you can either just start dragging this out, but in our case, we want to extrude this a specific value, and that is width. So that's going to be, again, a place where we're leveraging those parameters. So you can do that here in the extrude commands as well. And when I do that, it's going to hide the sketch by default. So if you want to do something more with that sketch, you can always come back over here to your tree. In sketches, you'll see sketch 1. You can show that. And we'll do it again because we want to create another piece here. So again, I'm going to say extrude, and here I'm going to create the side piece. Now this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 sections. So again, this side represents all of those sections. So you just need to make sure that you grab all the sections, and we want to say new body. And for the distance here, this is where we're going to use that ply parameter to use our material thickness. And again, make sure the operation is set to new body. That's very important. And we'll say okay. And then we can hide this sketch if we don't need it right now. Okay, now rather than re-sketch this, what I can do is I can just take this side piece and mirror it. So to do that, the first thing I need is a plane to mirror about. So we're going to use construct, and we're going to create what's called a midplane. And what you do here is you basically pick, say, something like this face, and then that is going to create a midplane right between it. So you can turn off all of your construction, or you can turn on and off this plane here. That is going to be a plane that I'm going to use quite a bit through the rest of this design. And now create, mirror. I'm going to mirror. You want to select bodies in this case. So our pattern type is bodies, and our mirror plane is this one. And we've picked this body to mirror. And now we've got that part. So that's going to be a technique that I use throughout this, which is to basically create one body and then mirror it across this center plane to leverage it over on the other side. So the next thing I need to do is to create the shelves and the back piece that are going to go from this inside face to the other inside face. So to start features that start from this inside face instead of from where we originally sketched it. So if you look, that sketch is actually on the outside, and we want to create some features from the inside. The easiest way to do this is to quickly create a new sketch on this inside face. And then let's just hide some of this stuff for a second. And I'm going to use the geometry from the first sketch. So project, include. So what you're doing here is you're basically saying, I want to just grab a reference to all of these lines from the first sketch. That way, if anything changes in the first one, it'll be updated here. And then we're going to use this new sketch to create some parts. Okay, so now we're going to use that sketch to create the rest of the components. So again, create an extrude, and here, rather than specifying a value, we're going to say we want to go up to the inside face there. That way you don't even have to worry about figuring out what that depth is supposed to be. And instead of join, again, we want to use new body. And now we've created the back. Now we'll go ahead and just repeat that process. So create, extrude, and we'll pick this, which is our bottom shelf. And we will say we want to go up to this inside face, and it will be a new body. You can right click and drag up to repeat a command, which is kind of nice sometimes. So do that, say new body up to that face. And then again, down here, you can see the kick plate, and we'll go to that inside face. That looks good. And remember to always set it to new body, and we'll hit OK. Now you can hide that sketch. Another thing that's nice to do here at this point is I'm going to apply an appearance. So again, I right click appearance, and you can browse into wood. So you can see here I've got into wood finished, and I've got oak glossy, oak semi-gloss. Let's use oak semi-gloss. That looks pretty good. And you just can drag this out onto your parts. Obviously this isn't a necessary step, but it looks pretty good when you're modeling and you're kind of looking at it the way it's going to look. I like it. So now that we have the basic parts, I want to create some tabs so that we can create the press fit joints between all of these components. So I'm going to hide all of the parts except for the kick plate, and you do this easily by selecting on the light bulbs here in the tree. Now I've got the kick, and I want to create a new sketch. I'm going to create a sketch on the front face here. I'm going to go and grab my 2-point rectangle tool, and we'll just draw these two tabs in kind of at a rough shape, and then we can go get dimension tool. So here I want the depth of this to be ply, so it's the ply thickness. Here's a nice thing we can do too, which is I can say, okay, I know that I have a parameter defined called kick, but I want this to be kick divided by 3. And then the same here. So we'll make the tab 1/3 of the depth. So if you change that kick parameter, this will all update. Over here, also ply and tab. And another thing we can do that I use a lot is I'm going to create a quick construction line. So I'll create a line that just goes from that midpoint. You'll know you have the midpoint when you see that triangle. You can select the line, right click, say you want to make it construction. That way it's really just there for reference. And now I can quickly create a dimension from the origin, which remember this is going to represent the actual edge of the bookcase. This is inset by the thickness of the side. So we want to go from here to the center, and then we want this to be equal to the overall bookcase width over 3. And that should put us right where we want to be. Now we can use that sketch that we just created to create the tab. So I'm going to create an extrude, and we pick the 2 profiles. And here what I want to do is again use the extents. I want to set this to be 2 and go up to that back face. And we'll go ahead and leave that as a join just so we can show one way of doing this, which is to use that as a join. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a mirror. And there's different choices here. I can either mirror faces or bodies. Next I'll show bodies, but in this step, let's use faces just so you can see the difference. So with faces, what I need to do is pick all of the faces of the component that I want to mirror. It's a little more steps, so I'll pick those 3 faces. And then for the mirror plane, again, we'll use that mirror plane that we created, and we get the result that we're looking for. Okay, so now let's create a sketch for the tabs on this shelf. So sketch, create sketch. I'm going to pick this face. And now we're going to create just the tabs on one side. And again, we'll create a lines for the midpoint. I do this because it gives me like a nice way to create a dimension to the midpoint of these rectangles. They don't really have to be straight or anything. And then what you want to do is pick them, right click, construction. Now those are just kind of some reference lines to give you that reference point at the center. It's not necessary, but I just do it out of habit. Now we'll create some dimensions. So we can again leverage our parameters. So the width is going to be tab, 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 and then the height of all of these tabs is going to be equal to the thickness of our ply. Now again, remember the point of this is that if I was to, after I measured my actual material thickness and I go modify that parameter ply, all of these tabs are going to adjust as well. So you're always going to have a nice perfect fit when you do it this way. And we'll also take advantage of our other parameters here. So this is going to be depth over 3. This one will be depth over 3. And then here, again, you want to make sure you're going from the edge over to the center of that, not from the edge of the shelf. And we'll call this one width over 3. And that should give us the sketch that we need to create these 3 tabs. Now we can create an extrude for these tabs. So grab the tabs. Again, distance up to that face. But again, we want to make these new bodies because we're going to really leverage just creating these 3 and then mirroring them around. So we'll take those 3, then we'll create a mirror of them. So grab the 3 bodies and we'll mirror them around our construction plane here. Now we've got these up. Let's go ahead and leverage that for the shelf as well, since we want the same exact tab pattern on that shelf. Again, the first thing I'll do is I'll just quickly create a mid plane between that face and that face. And that gives me this plane here. You can turn these on if you want. And then we can create a mirror. And this time we'll grab all 6 of these. And then mirror it about that new mid plane that I just created. Say OK. Turn the view of that off. Again, light bulbs turn things on and off. And I'm going to use my combine feature. So set the target, and then all of these are the tools. Join, don't want to keep the tools. And now we've got that part that we want. And do the same thing here. So again, this is why I like to make these tabs as individual bodies. And sometimes it's really just super convenient to mirror them around, copy them, and then combine them later. It just saves you a lot of work in the long run. Okay, let's create the sketch for the tabs on the back. So again, we'll create the sketch. We'll do that here. Sometimes you might want to rotate around so you're looking at this from the front so you have the right perspective. And we'll create our rectangles. So just kind of draw these in an arbitrary place to start with. And then make my reference to the midpoint just to make it easier to dimension later. And then we'll make these construction. So right click, construction. And now we'll create dimensions. So again, we're going to leverage all of those parameters. So the width of tab for all of these. And then the depth on these sides is ply. So we want to just have that go all the way through the thickness of our material. And then on the top, this is going to go into one of the blind pockets. So we'll call this one blind tab. And then for the position, we'll go from here to the center. We want that to be height over 3. Center to center will also be height over 3. And then here, we just want to measure from the actual 0 point, not from this inside edge. We really want the outside edge of the whole bookshelf to this point to be width over 3. And there we go. All right, again, just take these, create an extrude of the 3 tabs to the inside face, create new body. This way we can, again, mirror those 3 tabs about that initial mirror plane, and then do the combine. There we go. Okay, so let's create a sketch for the tabs on the top of the side. So create a sketch on this face back here. We'll create 2 rectangles. And again, we'll create dimensions. So we'll create all of the dimensions that we need. And this is going to be depth over 3. And then we'll just create the rest of the dimensions real quick. So now you can see there's a little bit of a problem where we've got the tabs coming right to the edge of the top piece. So we really need to make a little bit of a lip to be able to have room for a pocket. So rather than try to refigure out where that could be in the design, changing sketch planes or anything like that, all I'm going to do is come in here and say modify, press pull, and now I can just grab these faces, pull them out. We'll just go like 1/2 inch, and that'll just give me a little bit of a lip to create room for a pocket. You can repeat that. Grab this face, move it out 1/2 inch, and then the same thing over here. And now we've got a nice design. Note that the width and the depth now would be off, so the width would be actually 1 inch longer than we've originally defined. If you want, you could go back and modify the parameters, make a different equation, whatever. For now, I'm just going to leave it. Now we want to create the cutouts for all of these tabs. We're going to do that with the combine feature. So with combine, I can pick the part that I want to cut. The tool is going to be this kick. So basically I'm going to use the tabs in the kick to cut the pockets out of this bottom shelf. And we're going to say keep tools because we want to keep the part after it's done. Again, repeating that, combine. Let's say we want to cut out the back, and the back has pockets for the 2 shelves tabs. So the 2 shelves are going to cut the back. Do it again. Now we're going to cut, if we want to cut one of these sides. So we're going to cut the side, and all the parts that we need to use to cut the side that have tabs that intersect it are all of these. So say OK. Can repeat that again. Cut the right side, and again we'll pick all of the parts that are going to cut it. And then finally, one more time, pick the top, and we'll cut that with this part, and this part. So now, for example, if you look at one of these, if we were to hide some of these parts, you can see now that the sides have all of the pockets cut out.